After Argentina's successful journey at the 1986 World Cup and claiming the country's second title, Maradona set off to pursue personal glory at club level with Napoli, a mid-table club that had never won any major trophy. Since its founding in 1926, across 60 years up to 1986, the club had only won 2 Italian Cups, one in the 60s and one in the 70s. Not a club accustomed to trophies by any means. But Maradona had no problem joining a club like this, for several reasons. The first reason was that he didn't have many options to begin with. Remember, this was 1984, before everything he achieved at the World Cup. He was also leaving Spain with a damaged reputation, having caused a catastrophe that ended in a brawl during the Copa del Rey final that same year. The second reason was purely emotional. In the 2 years he spent at Barcelona, he felt a profound sense of alienation. The city's identity itself was foreign to him, a naturally separatist city where many of its original residents carried a deeply racist streak. Maradona was described as a Sudaca, a derogatory term used there for dark-skinned people from South America. He never felt he belonged. His humiliating departure from the club only added to that feeling, so his next move was chosen with great care. Maradona had always been a champion of the poor and the marginalized. Even the club where he began his professional career, Boca Juniors, carried that identity, the working-class club of the Argentine capital, rival to the bourgeois River Plate. So when Antonio Giuliano, Napoli's sporting director, traveled specifically to Barcelona to negotiate Maradona's signing, he told him, "You will become a god if you join Napoli. The people of this city will sacrifice their lives for you." Maradona didn't think twice. The city fit him perfectly, a city and fan base suffering from unemployment, poverty, and organized crime. At that time, Naples was ranked among the poorest and most violent cities in all of Europe, and it represented a mark of shame in the eyes of the aristocratic industrial north of Italy. Naples was like Gotham City. It needed a superhero to save it, and Maradona was Batman. The day he was presented, 80,000 fans packed the San Paolo Stadium in the height of summer. On that day, he declared, "I want to become a role model for the poor children of Naples, because they remind me of myself when I lived in Buenos Aires."
And so began Maradona's difficult journey, one that initially seemed like a step backward, but which time proved to be one of the most epic stories in football history. Just as he had transformed Argentina's national identity and placed them among the greats, he would transform this mid-table club into a trophy-winning machine. And not just any trophies. We're talking about the most powerful league in the world at that time. A man from the poor South coming to battle the rich northern powerhouses, Juventus and the 2 Milan giants. In his second season, the signs of revolution became clear. In the 1985-86 season, he scored winning goals against Italy's Big Three, then went to Mexico to produce his masterpiece at the World Cup, before returning to Italy to complete what seemed like a near impossible mission, winning the Italian league title for the first time in Napoli's history. But the momentum Maradona carried back from Mexico made it clear that no one could stop him. In the 1986-87 season, Napoli didn't just win the league, they won the domestic double, the league and the cup. Things that were once considered impossible for a club like Napoli. Things their fans couldn't have dreamed of even in their most beautiful dreams.
The city went absolutely mad, truly mad. The celebrations didn't stop for 2 or 3 days. People even went to the city cemeteries and put up signs with a message to their dead. If only you knew what you missed. Napoli, with Maradona, became one of Italy's great clubs, capable of challenging for the title every season. They also went on to win the only European trophy in the club's history to this day, the UEFA Cup in 1989. In short, Maradona took Napoli by the hand and led them to a completely different place. He became something far greater than a legend to them. The stories became surreal. A nurse once took a small vial of his blood after a blood test and placed it in her church as if it were a holy relic. They completely lost their minds over him. The relationship between Maradona and the people of Naples was unlike anything that can be easily described. A complete relationship containing every possible emotion, full of boundless joy and loyalty, built on trust and hope. But most importantly, it was a relationship of unconditional love on both sides. But unfortunately, as you might expect, good things never last. Because another relationship was born from Maradona in Naples. His relationship with the Camorra, one of the most dangerous mafia organizations in southern Italy. Maradona's popularity in Naples was overwhelming. He literally couldn't walk down the street or go anywhere. So the Camorra provided him with security, protection, freedom of movement, and also other things he loved very much: parties, drugs, and women.
Maradona continued down a path that would ultimately cost him himself. A genius inside the pitch, achieving great success with his club, but drowning in his desires outside of it. Inside the walls of Naples, across 6 years, Maradona kept building two things with no equal: unconditional love inside the city and unconditional hatred in the rest of Italy. This brings us to the 1989-90 season, which Maradona ended as Italian League champion with Napoli for the second time in the club's history, before arriving with Argentina at Italia 90 as reigning world champion and as the king of Italy itself. I had to tell you about Maradona's relationship with everything Italian before the tournament began, because that relationship would lead to a level of drama you cannot possibly imagine. Italy was hosting the World Cup for the second time in its history, and everyone was dreaming of a fourth title. Why not? The country possessed the most powerful league in the world. But it was an open secret that the biggest threat to the Italian dream was the Argentine national team, led by the most dangerous man in the world, Diego Armando Maradona. Since Argentina were the defending champions, they would naturally play the opening match. FIFA rules dictate that for opening matches and finals, the stadium must be large, no fewer than 60,000 seats. With the final set for Rome's Olimpico, which stadium was chosen for the opener? The San Siro in Milan, meaning Maradona would begin the World Cup surrounded by the crowd that hated him most on the entire planet. The opener was against Cameroon, on paper an easy match for Argentina. But from the moment it began, Maradona was subjected to a systematic campaign of abuse in the stands. And on the pitch, the Cameroon players were brutalizing everyone. Not just Maradona, they were destroying anyone who came near them. In that hostile atmosphere, Argentina couldn't do anything, and the match ended in one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. The curse of the defending champion and the opening match, which Argentina themselves had started in 1982, continued. A defeat that delighted the 80,000 Italians in the stadium, who cheered Cameroon with all their hearts. But as I'll explain, their joy at that defeat was misplaced. Maradona had no patience for what had happened at the San Siro. He described it as a disgrace. Before the match, they booed the Argentine national anthem and whistled every time I touched the ball. But then he added a second statement that was far more cutting. The only thing that made me happy today was discovering that Italians in Milan have stopped being racist. Today, for the first time, they cheered for Africans. Argentina's next two group matches were in Naples. No coincidence, surely, whether from FIFA or the organizing committee. But it wasn't just the venue that was controversial. What happened in the match against the Soviet Union stirred even more debate. The Soviet Union was a very strong team at that time, but they had started the tournament badly, losing to Romania 2-0. So they came against Argentina needing a positive result. The match began with a fierce Soviet attack that produced two pivotal moments, a fork in the road for Argentina's entire tournament. The first, in the 10th minute, goalkeeper Neri Pumpido suffered a broken foot. The second, in the 13th minute, a Soviet corner from the north side, headed toward goal by an attacker, but a player stepped up in the role of goalkeeper and palmed the ball away with his hand just before it crossed the line. I don't need to tell you who that player was. Clearly, he had enjoyed it after the goal against England. Strangely, the Swedish referee was standing just 3 to 4 meters away with a perfect view and said nothing. No whistle, no penalty. But consider the full picture.
What would it mean for a Swedish referee to blow his whistle? First, a penalty. Argentina would go behind after just 15 minutes. Second, a straight red card for Maradona, the tournament's biggest star, sent off for denying a clear goal, leaving Argentina to play nearly 80 minutes with 10 men and without their most important player. Third, a real possibility that Argentina would lose the match and be eliminated from a World Cup being held in Italy, in a match being played in Naples. One whistle from the Swedish referee could have completely changed the narrative of Italia 90. I don't think FIFA, the organizing committee, or any football fan in the world wanted any of that to happen. So the referee said nothing. Argentina woke up, produced their best performance of the tournament, and won 2-1. In the third group match, Argentina drew 1-1 with Romania and finished third in the group.
Finishing third sent Argentina to face one of the top group winners in the round of 16, and lucky them, it was Brazil. Welcome to the Holy Water match. Argentina emerged again from Naples and traveled to Turin, to Juventus' stadium in northern Italy, where the unconditional hatred for Maradona was total. The entire crowd was cheering Brazil. Brazil, after 20 years without a world title, came with a new identity. They had abandoned beautiful football in favor of pragmatism and efficiency. They dominated the match completely, hitting the post and crossbar 4 times. A relentless Brazilian attack throughout, unable to score. But then Maradona summoned a flash of Mexico '86, surging from midfield, dancing through the Brazilian players, drawing the entire defense to his right. Then whoosh, playing a pass to the left for Claudio Caniggia, completely unmarked. Caniggia danced past his marker and rolled the ball into an empty net, against the run of play entirely.
And of course, that match was not without its conspiracy theories. Brazil's left back Branco, who was closest to the Argentine bench, claimed they gave him water to drink, and that as soon as he drank it, he became dizzy and couldn't see straight in front of him. Of course, there is absolutely nothing to prove this incident actually happened. And this moment was named the Holy Water. Only the Argentines could create a disaster with one hand and give it a religious blessing with the other. Maradona scores with his hand, they say it's the hand of God. Brazil gets fed drugged water, they call it holy water.
Argentina entered the quarterfinals against Yugoslavia, who had beaten Spain in the round of 16. After 30 minutes, Maradona caused the sending off of defender Sabanazovic, so Argentina should have controlled things. But let me surprise you and say it was actually a very even match. Both teams created chances, especially in extra time. Bruscolati scored in the second period of extra time, but the Swiss referee disallowed it, claiming the ball hit his hand. Since when does that count against Argentina? Unless it wasn't Maradona, I suppose. The match ended goalless after extra time, sending us to penalties. And here, a new Argentine hero emerged, Sergio Goycochea. Penalties began. Yugoslavia hit the crossbar with their first. Argentina scored their first 2. Then Maradona personally missed the third. Yugoslavia scored their third to level things. Troglio missed Argentina's fourth. Yugoslavia then needed to score their remaining 2 to go through. And here, Goycochea began his legendary story with Italia 90, saving both. Dezzotti scored Argentina's 5th to rescue Maradona from serious embarrassment after his missed spot kick. Argentina reached the semifinals, having scored just 4 goals in 5 matches and failing to win against 2 teams reduced to 10 men. Maradona's brilliance had barely shown itself in Italy, aside from the Brazil goal, and that was for a reason. He had been playing the entire tournament with an injured ankle, swollen throughout the competition, requiring pain-killing injections constantly. His opponents showed no mercy either. It was nearly impossible for him to perform at his normal level. But his mere presence on the pitch unsettled opponents, and his presence in the semifinals specifically carried golden weight, because the opponent was Italy, and the match was in Naples, the stronghold of Maradona's devotees. The Italians later admitted this was a mistake.
In the pre-match press conference, Maradona played what I consider the greatest and most dangerous psychological game in football history. He appealed directly to the people of Naples. The Italians will consider you Italian on July 3rd, 1990, and only on that day. They will not acknowledge you for the other 364 days of the year. They will go back to marginalizing you, back to mocking you for your poverty.
He was extremely clever. He knew it would be very difficult for Naples fans to cheer for Argentina, but he created a controversy that dragged the whole country into a side argument and exploited the fact that the match was in Naples to plant seeds of doubt and ambiguity. According to accounts from those who were at the stadium, the atmosphere was strange. You couldn't say anyone was truly cheering for Argentina. The Napoli fans did put up banners confirming their support for Italy. Maradona in our hearts, Italy in our chants. But everyone confirmed the general atmosphere inside the stadium was unusual. There was none of the passion that had been present from day one at every match in Rome. Naples has some of the craziest fans in Italy, normally setting the stands alight in league matches. But on that day, there was an atmosphere of doubt and confusion. Something was wrong. Nobody could say what it was, or describe the state the crowd was in, or explain why. Naples fans defended themselves by saying the team's performance on the pitch was the reason the stands were quiet. It was a tight defensive match with very few chances. Schillaci snatched a goal in the first half for Italy. Goycochea equalized with a header in the second half for Argentina, sending us to a penalty shootout.
Both teams scored their first three. Then Donadoni came up and missed for Italy, and Maradona stepped forward, having just missed against Yugoslavia a few days earlier, and placed it almost the same way. But luck was with him as Zenga dived the wrong way. Maradona sprinted to the bench to celebrate as if he'd read the future and already knew what was going to happen. And Goycochea was as good as Maradona's confidence, saving Serena's penalty. Argentina won, and the last Argentine to score was Maradona himself, extinguishing the Italian dream in the very city where he was king. The shock was too great for Italy to absorb. How did a team that had conceded no goals all tournament lose to a side stumbling through on luck, led by an injured version of Maradona? In Naples, of all places? That was the assessment of Azeglio Vicini, Italy's coach at the time. We didn't go out because of penalties. We lost because we were playing in Naples. If this match had been played anywhere else in Italy, we would certainly have won. Argentina traveled to Rome for the final to face West Germany for the second consecutive World Cup final between these two sides. The only time in World Cup history that two teams have met in back-to-back finals. The reception waiting for Argentina at the Olimpico was exactly as expected. Heated. The action started from the very moment the Argentine national anthem played. The entire crowd booed and abused them in a precedent never before seen at a World Cup final. And what do you think Maradona did? Of course he didn't stay quiet. While his Argentine teammates stood singing their national anthem, Maradona was simultaneously cursing the Italians in the most obscene terms imaginable. The match began, and what was expected happened. West Germany were far superior, the only team on the pitch actually seeking to win and creating chances, but still unable to score. Until the 65th minute, when the Mexican referee gave Pedro Monzon the first red card in the entire history of World Cup finals. Argentina were down to 10 men. Still, Germany couldn't score. Then, in the 85th minute, just 5 minutes from time, the referee awarded a highly questionable penalty to Rudi Völler.
And so Maradona, injured, leading a limited Argentina squad, lost the final. Along the way, he had beaten Brazil and Italy, the host nation. He fell to West Germany, genuinely the strongest team in the world, on a questionable penalty. And that was what broke him. He stood there crying after the match. He said, "The referee sent off Monzon for a normal challenge, then awarded a penalty from his imagination. Football is my life,
And I'm not crying because we lost. I'm crying because of the way we lost. He accused the referee of trying to appease the Italians, of doing everything possible to prevent the match reaching penalties, because he knew what Argentina had done to Yugoslavia and Cacho before the final, so he had to end it within 90 minutes. What Maradona didn't know was that what happened at the Olimpico that day was just the beginning of the end of his legend in Italy and in football altogether. You might think it was the semifinal in Naples that sealed Maradona's fate in Italy. And yes, it was a major factor. But in Maradona's own telling, his story with Napoli had already ended before the World Cup even began, specifically after winning the UEFA Cup in 1989. He felt his mission with them was complete. He had achieved everything possible. He couldn't go on. Because the 5 years he'd spent in Naples,
his personal trainer, Fernando Signorini, used to speak of dealing with two personalities. Diego, the humble, socially brilliant person, the family man whose soul lived in every member of his family. Maradona, the one who cheated on his wife, who spent from Sunday to Wednesday taking cocaine, and came home to lock himself in the bathroom so his daughters wouldn't see him like that. Diego was obsessed with the game of football. Maradona was drowning in the temptations of life that were destroying the career he was obsessed with. Diego shone on the pitch. Maradona wrecked everything off it. His drug addiction was ruining his life. All he wanted was to live in peace, away from the poisoned atmosphere he'd been living in Naples. He asked the club president to let him leave. The president refused, and later admitted he had been Maradona's jailer. The president kept him imprisoned within the club's walls, while Carmen Giolano from the Camorra kept drowning his mind in drugs outside them. And yet, Maradona remained a genius on the pitch, winning the league after his request to leave was refused. But the semifinal was the last nail in the coffin of his time in Italy. He became unwanted by everyone. The newspaper La Repubblica conducted a poll. Who is the most hated person in Italy? Maradona swept the vote. The protection provided by the Camorra was lifted from him.
In March 1991, Maradona failed a drugs test for cocaine and was banned from football for 15 months. In other words, the end of Maradona's career. Or so it should have been. Maradona was finished. The story was over. He served 15 months out of football, and after the ban ended, there were reportedly big clubs interested in signing him, Real Madrid and Olympique de Marseille among them. But he himself was truly finished. As he had confirmed dozens of times, all he wanted was to live in peace. He went to Sevilla in Spain to play out his days quietly. But then a crisis emerged. Argentina were in danger of not qualifying for the 1994 World Cup in America. In their final home qualifier, Colombia arrived top of the group by just 1 point, needing a win. Without Maradona in the squad, Argentina suffered one of the most humiliating defeats in their history, losing 5-0 to Colombia at the Monumental. Argentina failed to qualify directly and had to enter a playoff. What to do to save the national team? Bring back Maradona. He was at Newell's Old Boys in Argentina at the time, a below-average club, and was considered finished in the eyes of the entire country. They had won the Copa America in 1993 without him, but when it came to the qualifiers, the whole nation called for his return. Maradona answered the call. He joined the playoff squad and traveled to Australia for the first leg, his first official match with the national team since the 1990 World Cup final. Gold doesn't rust. He set up Argentina's goal in the 1-1 draw, then led them to a 1-1 win in Buenos Aires. Mission accomplished. Argentina were at the World Cup.
But the problem was that Maradona was back in the spotlight he didn't want anymore. He had seen himself as doing a small thing, just 2 playoff matches to help his country in a moment of need. But the entire country wanted him to stay and play the World Cup. That's why he announced publicly in February 1994 that he would not play in the tournament. The world turned upside down. Pressure came from everywhere.
Journalists camped outside his house for days. And Maradona, being who he is, you know him by now, went inside, grabbed a rifle, came out, and shot at them, wounding 4. Can you imagine the state he was in? So the World Cup was going to go ahead without Maradona, or so it seemed. But suddenly, without any prior indication, Maradona changed his mind. In April 1994, he went with his personal coach Signorini to a farm in the city of La Pampa in Argentina for an extremely grueling rehabilitation program to prepare for the World Cup. In less than a month, he lost 12 kilograms. All of this happened suddenly. The official explanation given was that Maradona wanted to correct his mistakes and that he wanted to play the World Cup to silence all his critics and confirm his status as the world's greatest player. But there's a missing piece of the puzzle. How does a man who shoots journalists trying to pressure him into playing the World Cup suddenly decide to literally push himself to the limit to go and play it?
The answer lies in one of the most dangerous conspiracy theories in football history. A story you won't find a single official source confirming, found only in the book How They Stole the Game by British author David Yallop. This book focuses mainly on the era of Brazilian João Havelange's FIFA presidency from 1974 to 1998, and how they transformed football from a beautiful game beloved worldwide into a business generating billions of dollars, riddled with corruption, greed, and personal interests. In the section dealing with Maradona's strange participation at USA 94, Yallop writes, Henry Kissinger, vice chairman of the World Cup Organizing Committee and head of the tournament's promotion, was in conversation with Havelange about the biggest stars coming to America. Havelange sent him a very strong list of names, but Kissinger wasn't satisfied. None of them filled his eye. He said, not one of them can carry this tournament. American audiences don't even know who they are. I want Maradona. Havelange said, Maradona is finished. He's been retired from international football for over a year. He's shooting people to avoid playing the World Cup. Kissinger replied, I don't care. Figure it out and bring me Maradona. American requests were orders, so Havelange called his deputy, the president of the Argentine Football Association, and said, handle it. The big boys want Maradona at the World Cup. Julio Grondona said, come on, Havelange, you know the situation. The man is a drug addict who hasn't played in ages. To get him ready, he'll almost certainly need banned substances that will show up in a drugs test. Guarantee me he won't be tested. Havelange said, you have my word. So Grondona went to Maradona, told him the whole story, and Maradona agreed, promising he would commit and get clean to play the World Cup. That's why they went to that remote farm, far from every luxury of life. And Maradona came back an animal, in possibly better physical shape than he'd been in at Italia 90. The World Cup began, and Argentina looked terrifying in their first match against Greece, the biggest win of the entire first round, a clean 4-0, with Batistusta's hat trick and Maradona setting up one of the goals. In the 60th minute, Maradona personally scored a stunning goal from outside the box, but his celebration raised eyebrows. He rushed toward the camera, eyes wide and visibly frenzied. The press said it was the celebration of a man under the influence of cocaine. After the first round, Argentina were the best team in the tournament. Yallop continues. After that match, Brazil's president personally called Havelange and said, what have you done? It seems Argentina are stronger than we thought. At this rate, Brazil won't win the World Cup on your watch. Havelange said, I've already done my part and kept my word to America and brought them the best version of Maradona for the World Cup. But now I must do my duty to my country and eliminate them. And the task is simple.
After the second group match against Nigeria, which Argentina won, Maradona was selected for a drugs test. He thought it was routine, just going through the motions. He walked off the pitch with the nurse, laughing. We'd never actually seen medical staff come onto the pitch to take players for testing. But the test was conducted, and they found in his blood exactly what they were certain they'd find, the banned substance ephedrine. Maradona was expelled from USA 94.
Maradona spoke through tears at the press conference afterward. "Today they cut off my legs," a reference to the end of his football career. "They betrayed me. They broke their promise." Whose promise? Did he mean the people around him or FIFA? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what that promise was either. As I said, there isn't a single official source confirming what the British author wrote. But the sequence of events and Maradona's own words after the tournament make it very plausible.
The Nigeria match on June 25, 1994 was Maradona's last World Cup match and his last match for the Argentine national team. And with it ended what I consider the most beautiful story of any football player in history. A story that the most talented screenwriters on earth couldn't create, with all its contradictions. The story of the genius player, who inside the pitch did everything to climb to the peak of glory, and who outside the pitch did everything to destroy himself.